Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch. See what happens.
How are you, man?
I'm good.
What do they got on your side?
The cream pie.
You like that?
Oh my God. So I thought I was like losing my mind because I'm like, wait, Madison and Alex are engaged, right? In terms of the edit and in terms of my yammering, it was a long time ago that happened. And of course, Madison had yet to break up with Mason. It is interesting that so many episodes are spent in the pods. In the past seasons, I don't think we've ever seen this many episodes dedicated to the pods, which makes me worry that the rest of the season isn't interesting enough to include in the edit. Or there's enough interesting stuff for the pods, which I would agree. There's been nothing that has been boring. But anyway, so Madison is sitting down with Mason, presumably to break up with him. And there's a cream pie. And yeah, I'm guessing that's not going to play well with the audience, that she's going to joke around in a very surface way, flirty sex way with him, as she knows, I assume, that she's going to break up with him. You would think that she would refrain from that, but it wasn't extensive.
That is so cute.
I was like, oh, that might be a little inappropriate, but fuck it, we'll do that.
That's so funny. Yeah. I don't know if you heard the news.
What's that?
I kind of assumed that you knew before coming into this.
Interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, so Alex goes back to the lounge and does not announce to everyone that he has become engaged to Madison. Maybe the only reason why, because most of the guys or most of the cast members, when they get engaged, they celebrate with everyone, unless they are knowledgeable that their partner still has yet to break up. So when Alex went back to the lounge, apparently they didn't have a conversation, Alex and Madison, about what was going to happen. Because Madison right now is saying, I thought Alex would have told you, or I thought rumor would have gotten around to you that me and Alex are engaged. And maybe she was hoping for that, right? But I was hypothesizing that Alex was being respectful to Madison by not saying something to give her a chance to have a conversation with Mason, instead of Mason finding out through the grapevine, which would potentially be bad for everyone. But it also puts Alex in a bind of having to very much lie by omission to Mason by acting like everything's fine in the lounge and even chatting with him at times. So there's no real right answer to this, but I would have thought that Madison, I guess it's intuitive that Madison would have thought that Mason would have known. But that's not great, because she hoped, but you would think she would want to tell him herself. So.
But yesterday kind of like had these like instincts and like gut feelings about things.
Yeah.
I just think that maybe this is not like our story,
Yeah, it's hard to know what to say in a situation like this. I will say it's a lot better than Dave's breakup with Molly. But yeah, how do you word it? What words do you use? The message is the same. It's hard. So she's wording it like that. I will commend her that as soon as possible, or pretty quickly, she launches into that after laughing about the cream pie.
I was able to get there faster with someone else. And yeah.
She's framing it, and I think she's had a while to think about it, as getting there faster. That's a good way of framing it, because it's not critical to Mason. It's just a happenstance, kind of. I guess it could be interpreted as a criticism of him, but it's certainly not a strong one. And we've seen a lot of breakups. I hope eventually she communicates. I think it's important, if true, that she communicate to Mason that her feelings were genuine, that she's sorry, that it wasn't faked, that she was seriously considering Mason, and that she feels bad. She doesn't want to hurt him. Whether or not he's hurt or not, you don't want to assume and self-aggrandize. But, you know, it would make sense. Now, a lot of these breakups don't include those messages, but many do.
I feel like I added some unnecessary pressure when I told you that I like was committing to you. When I said it, I don't know if it felt right.
Okay. So at first I'm thinking, well, Mason, you know, take it easy on yourself. You were expressing yourself, and if it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out. But then, of course, we remember that she was arguably the one pressuring him to step out ahead, get out over his skis, and prematurely, because he wasn't naturally coming forward with that, she was eliciting that from him and basically giving him the message that unless he says that, then she's going to go with the other guy. And at the time I'm thinking, oh, I didn't realize Mason was that close in the running. And then we find out that he wasn't. And she basically pressured Mason twice to do that. So hopefully Madison steps in and say, oh, no, that wasn't why. 2, that didn't bother me. 3, I kind of put you in that position. So if anything, it's my fault.
It was an unfair thing to do to both the people I was seeing.
I mean, I don't know why you would say that if you didn't mean it. You're still dating 2 people at this point, you know?
Yeah.
And then he starts talking about Meg. Did I miss something? Let's rewind that.
Some unnecessary pressure when I told you that I like was committing to you. When I said it, I don't know if it felt right.
I mean, I don't know what her face is saying, but I guess from the outside, it would raise suspicion as to whether or not anything he says is accurate to his heart, or that he would just be saying it, right? And it did look that way. I mean, it looked really labored as he was barely saying that. In fact, the way he's characterizing it, I think, is stronger than what he was actually saying verbatim. Anyway, maybe that face is a concern for Meg. I don't know. But I don't think she deserves to have that face for herself. Although I guess, you know, he was saying it to her, so I guess she could think, wow, so he's saying that it wasn't real and that was a lie. But, you know, she should have been at least mostly emotionally moving on from Mason at this point, which looked like that happened a long time ago, so that shouldn't really bug her that much.
It was an unfair thing to do to both the people I was seeing.
I mean, I don't know why you would say that if you didn't mean it. You're still dating 2 people at this point, you know?
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense that he regrets having committed or been more, well, what do you say? I guess it makes sense that he regrets having, you know, dating 2 people and then overcommitted to one prematurely before he wanted to. And now that Madison is leaving him, he's like, well, crap, I guess looking back, I shouldn't have said that because 1, I didn't feel right about saying it. 2, well, now I'm probably going to go with Meg, and that's going to haunt me, I guess is what he's thinking. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Meg would be that concerned about it, though.
And so you said that, but you didn't mean it. And I kind of saw that just in the way that you were being so elusive. I just think you were probably saying very similar things to both of us. I got into my other date and was like, this is exactly what I've been.
How did this turn into Mason being the bad guy? I think this is Madison's, I mean, who knows? We're just seeing an edit, but it looks like this is Madison's distrust or something coming out and interpreting things through that. Because the way it looked to me from the outside was that Mason wasn't sure. He really liked Madison and he really liked Meg. Maybe liked Madison more. And Madison put the screws to him, as I've been putting it. and he was worried he was going to lose her, so he leaned into a particular feeling, and it was either really hard for him to spit out, or because it wasn't really exactly true, or he's just not really great with saying those things. It kind of looked like maybe both, but he meant them for the most part. It wasn't just lying, and said them after Madison was fairly pushy about that. I mean, he's a big boy. He can resist that, but, it's hard to know what to do when you're in that situation. And then was hoping that things would work out with Madison. It didn't work out with Madison. And now he's in his mind maybe thinking, okay, Meg, and how do I repair that if it got out there in the lounge that I was committing to Madison, because I truly do like Meg, and that's just seems to me what's going on. And from Madison's side, she could in this moment say, "Oh, interesting," and well, if anyone's to blame, it was me, because I gave the impression that I was giving you an ultimatum. One, as in my words, because she phrased it that way, and two, that I was putting the screws to you. So if you were exaggerating a little bit, it's probably at least somewhat my fault. Instead, the way she's singing it is, she's taking it far of just like, oh, you lied to me, or you didn't mean it, or something. And yeah, that's not what he said, and I don't think that's necessarily true. It might be, but I don't think so.
Looking for and wanting to hear. And that's kind of the tough part, is like, you can have two really great connections, but at some point, like, you have to decide, and I have decided.
I don't appreciate this break up with Mason while lecturing him. I mean, maybe she's doing this because she cares about Meg, but the focus should be that she is breaking up with him, and that is hurtful to him, and she put the screws to him. But at the very least, she's breaking up with him. So I don't know if I'm a fan of the lecturing bit, even if it is true. If she's trying to help, or she is trying to stick up for Meg or something, but a time and a place. And I don't even know if it's justified.
Obviously, it's not my conversation to have. But, Meg and I did talk. I think you kind of just, tried to keep two good things going at once, and I don't know, might have lost both of them.
What? Pot calling the kettle black? What? You'd think she would see the irony in what she's saying. And even if she believed it to be true, would avoid saying it, especially in the process of breaking up with him, because she was doing that. Now, I wouldn't say any of them were, I don't know, stringing people along, really, because it's hard. You don't know. It's confusing. How would you know if you connect with two people and you're kind of vacillating, or it's, midweek or day 6, 7 out of 10, and you're just like, I think, but I don't know, and I really like this other person. What am I supposed to do? It's normal. So, now, she's saying you were telling both of us the same thing. And yeah, maybe Mason should reflect on that. And maybe the conclusion is, when I get pressured from people like Madison, maybe I should be careful, or I should not feel like I have to say something I'm not ready to say. There's that. But the communication to Meg, Meg hasn't pressured him. So it's a different scenario. Anyway, yeah, I'm not so she's sitting down to break up with him, but the overall headline is, this is Madison's opportunity to confront Mason. Wow. Know your audience, Madison. Like, you win. You just break up with Mason. Say you're sorry, and go with Alex, and let Meg and Mason work it out for them. You have a need to somehow what? What bone are you picking here?
I didn't come into this trying to have two things going at once.
I'm not faulting you for that. Like, that's just what this is, right? You know, maybe you could have been a little bit more decisive, but it's neither here nor there. It's at this point for me.
Did you have a reaction when you saw this scene? It's going in so many disparate directions. She's there to break up, but she's also there to put him in his place. And she's there to stick up for Meg. She's there to blame him for why he is at least losing her, and maybe both of them, because we're supposed to believe that Mason is a big fat liar. Because you put the screws to him and he emphasized or felt like he had to say something, which isn't great. He shouldn't say something if he doesn't mean it, but he probably, it seemed like he meant it. You know, I think he has a hard time talking about anything deep, and so I think he was just amplifying something that he was maybe planning on getting into later, or I don't know. But she's telling him that it wasn't a good thing. I mean, okay. So if it is viably interpreted as him not being truthful, it's hard to say because it doesn't seem that way, but if it's a viable interpretation, we don't know because we're barely seeing the data. They have more data. She has more data. I guess I want to know what Meg thinks, although Meg's pretty easygoing. But Madison, for her, maybe it's viable that he is too optimistic or giving the wrong impression. But that just doesn't apply because Madison was, in all but words, saying that she was done with Mason unless he showed that he was into her. And then when he showed he was into her, I think twice, she was like, okay, duly noted. Not, oh my God, we're on the same page. It was like, okay, duly noted. Let's move on. Yeah, I don't need to go through. You get it, right? I don't. So then I wonder what's going on with Madison. What's the drive here? I mean, she's with Alex, and what, she has some resentment against Mason? Yeah, that must be what it is. That she has resentment against Mason. It's some sort of displacement, some sort of transference about being not told that someone loves her enough. We could see, given her background, that. So it seems like that's what's going on, that she has displaced. So it's just speculative, but that since Mason was not particularly emotionally forward, that it left room for her to displace onto him the past relationships that were on paper supposed to be familial and family and attached and close, but were not. And she resented that and maybe even hated him or was hostile. I mean, putting the screws to him, looking back, you could argue was a hostile act. This is definitely hostile. She's in the act of breaking up with him. Let's just really highlight that. She's engaged and she's breaking up with him. And the overall vibe is one of judgment and criticism and blame to him. Yeah. So, yeah, she must have been putting the screws to him in a way that she deserved to put screws to, like, her father or her parents or something. And she's hostile to them, not to him. And we're seeing a distortion, we're seeing a displacement, a transference. Sometimes people call it a projection. It's not a projection. You can listen to my episodes on defenses and projective identification. So, yeah. I'm guessing Mason will bounce back, but I'm not a fan of this.
Maybe we can be friends. No, that probably sucks to hear, though.
No, for sure. Everything happens for a reason, so this, no hard feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not gonna eat this.
So not only was there no apology from her or any kind of positive sentiment like, hey, I really connected with you and I wish you the best, but she blamed him and criticized him and called him essentially a manipulative liar. Yikes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not gonna eat this breakfast.
Appreciate it. I wish you the best in your conversations today. Just be honest.
Yep, I got it.
Ick. Yikes. Now, it could be a projection if we were to frame it as her knowing that she is the sort of person to manipulate or deceive, not in a severe way, but in a self-serving way of wanting to keep your options open with Alex and Mason by not telling Mason the full story and by giving Mason an ultimatum. And you don't like that aspect of yourself because you have a tendency to do that. And you project that onto him. There's an aspect of self that you're projecting. Could be that too. All these fit pretty well for me. All right, well, let's adjourn there. Tune in next time when I continue watching. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.